Dear procurement friend, if you will stay until the very end of this episode, you will know about the special conditions for you to participate the special free procurement webinars that we will run together with our guest. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Future Procurement. My name is Robert Freeman and today we have Katie Jarvis-Grove as a guest. Hello, Katie.
Hi there, Robert. Hi, everyone.
Katie is a procurement consultant. She's a trainer working with businesses and individuals promoting effective procurement and, of course, reducing costs. Katie, have I said everything correct?
Perfect.
And Katie, you are coming from the UK, right?
Correct, yes.
Please tell us a little bit more about yourself and about your great and quite a long journey in procurement.
Okay, so my name's Katie. I've been working in procurement for over 20 years now and absolutely love it. Everything I do professionally is procurement. It's all I really know. I found my way into procurement sort of by accident, to be honest, when I was a young lady in my first job as an admin person. And my manager at the time said, we need to look at the costs of the stationery. The stationery cupboard is full. There's too much rubbish in there. We're buying things, but we don't need them. Katie, go away and sort it out. So to cut a long story short, basically, I went in that cupboard and sorted out what we had, what we didn't need, and looked at the prices we were paying for things which were ridiculously high, and started a dialogue with the stationery company and looked at ordering things to get what we needed when we needed rather than holding too much stock, and negotiating prices to make sure we paid a good price. And I really enjoyed it. I got a buzz out of getting good deals, about seeing the stock levels come down, and seemed to be quite good at it. So from there on in, I decided purchasing was the job for me. I then went into a different job. I actually applied for a job as a buyer and had my first official buying role then, where I worked for an agricultural spares company running the purchasing department. I did that for about 3 years. Again, absolutely loved it. Got everything sorted, got some good deals in place, and then got bored because everything was working quite well. So I then went on to bigger and better things and went to another manufacturing company, worked there buying steel and some really sort of expensive key commodities, which took me traveling. I went all over looking at steel plants and manufacturing plants, and again, absolutely loved it. Stayed there for some time, got everything in place, put some just-in-time systems in to look at stock control, and then got bored because it was all working, so went somewhere else again. And over the last few years, I've worked in all sorts of industries, manufacturing, retail, right through to the most recent employed job I had, which was in agriculture, buying everything from tractors to fertilizer to combine harvesters, you name it, I've bought it. So over 20 years, I have done quite a lot.
Wow. So starting from stationery and then agriculture, manufacturing, plants, retail, agriculture, and again, wow. It's
yes,
quite a broad spectrum of different areas. And can you share with us, is it even possible to have some commonalities, so to say, in all of these things? I mean, after changing the companies, changing the industries, do you still see the red thread in all of those different challenges that you have in different industries? Does the industry make the things very special in procurement?
In my opinion, and I've said this to quite a few people, if you're good at procurement, you can procure pretty much anything, anywhere. The fundamentals, the base understanding of procurement doesn't change. So whether it's stationery or a combine harvester, the skills you need the supplier management, the negotiation skills, the contract law understanding. All of those things are the same, regardless of what you're buying and who from. In some instances, yes, you do need specialists, you need technical drawings, you need engineers. But ultimately, as a buyer, as long as you've got the support and the team around you that you need, the skills that you have are transferable across a multitude of industries.
Very interesting. And then all of those industries you were working in, you were still working in direct procurement, or?
Direct and indirect. I've done tangible and non-tangible. So I've also done things like electricity, insurance, agency labour. So all sorts of everything across the years I've done.
But then maybe with direct and indirect, it's bigger difference, so to say, or?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, when you've got something sort of direct, it is significantly different to the indirect purchases. But again, I think the skills you need, they're still similar. You're still working with people. It's still the supplier relationships. The fundamentals of procurement, in my view, are still the same.
With your 20 years experience or over 20 years experience, can you describe how has procurement changed until now, since the time you remember?
Yes, I think it hasn't changed as much as I would maybe like it to change, but things are beginning to develop. I still think procurement as a career, as a profession, isn't really getting the credibility it deserves. Historically, I think people just wanted the office junior to go and look at the stationery or bits and bobs and didn't actually understand the fundamentals of how important buying well was. In some businesses that I go to now on a consultancy level, that's still the same. Businesses say there's no skill in buying. What's difficult about spending money? And then I have to sit down and address the situations. I have to explain to them about the ethical buying, the sustainability, the corporate social responsibility, all those things that have sort of big ticks against them in this day and age, whereby it's really important that we're doing things properly. There's legislation now to make sure that things are done correctly and ethically. And I think as a procurement professional, it's quite a heavy weight on our shoulders to do things properly. Whereas 20 years ago, there wasn't really the checks that there are now. If products were coming in from third world countries and potentially there was child labour or sort of fit conditions for people to work in, people weren't overly concerned about that then. People just wanted the lowest possible price. Whereas now people want to make sure that the staff making the products are looked after. If you're buying something that's from a raw material such as wood, that it's sustainable, that there's trees being planted again, that the businesses are taking an interest in the environment, that the pollution levels from the factories potentially are as low as possible, and that people are really trying to give something back to protect the planet, make sure that everything is as green, as ethical and as sustainable as possible. So I think the biggest changes I've seen is the fact that people do care more now about where things come from, which I think is absolutely, it's critical. It has to be that way. But procurement as a profession could still do with a lot more profile raising, a lot more credibility. I think it's key in any business to have a good procurement function. And I still don't think that every business quite grasps that concept.
Interesting. So in your point of view, is it about, you said about these changes connected to people understanding or judging, evaluating now how ethical is the business, how sustainable it is, about the complexity of supply chains and what happens. Is it the core of this change that you described? Is it connected to people tolerating less today than 20 years ago, or is it that maybe we are more aware of what's happening?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I think awareness is considerably more than it was 20 years ago. Technologically, we've advanced a lot more. So with the use of internet, Sky TV, all those things that have come along whereby we're more aware of how things are sort of manufactured, maybe in third worlds or countries that aren't quite as economically sound as some of the more well-known companies. So I think the fact that we get the reports from the media now on the good and the bad has made people realize that actually everyone has a right to a decent sort of way of living, a decent wage. So I think it's awareness, and with awareness has become compassion. People do actually care more now about the other people in the world rather than just we want it, it has to be cheap. So I think awareness, and people do genuinely care more now, in my opinion.
Interesting. And there is a ongoing debate that I was part of recently. It was around the supply chains, and the discussion was like, are our supply chains becoming more complex? Or the trigger for this discussion in my case was that we were talking about the risks in supply chains, in modern supply chains, and that media can make big scandals and you name it. We have quite many scandals every month. But I think now this phrase that I like to repeat, your supply chain is as strong as its weakest link, right?
Correct, yes.
And to my understanding, is this transparency kind of creates this extra responsibility on you if you want to avoid risks, kind of this public media risk or whatever, but also on you as entrepreneur, as a responsible company, if you are a big international corporation or whatever, to like think about the footprint you are leaving behind you when you produce or when you supply your goods. Katie, you touched the very, very interesting topic about the role of procurement in the companies. So does procurement get the recognition it deserves?
In my opinion, it still doesn't get the recognition it deserves, but it's coming. It's like the slow horse in the race. It's coming. Eventually, we'll get to the finish line, but we're still not at the front as a profession. In schools, in universities, people study business, they study finance, they study marketing, they study sales, and then procurement kind of comes along at the end. It's really not up there like it should be. And I think every business really needs to understand that maximum profit isn't necessarily made by the markup you put on the end of your product. It's actually reducing your core inputs at the start of the process. That, coupled with good business knowledge, can make you much more professional and make your profit a lot more significant at the end. And I think people that really understand procurement as a profession and employ people that have got the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply qualifications, those businesses are really taking a step forward. Those businesses are doing really well. They're ticking all the boxes again for the ethical sustainability, and they're really, really beginning to come forward as the businesses that are going to be present in the future. The businesses that are still sort of just getting by, how they were in the 80s and the 90s, probably with people of a certain age that aren't necessarily as concerned with things as the younger generation, those businesses aren't going to be at the forefront of manufacturing, of retail moving forward. So I think procurement, yes, it's coming. Slowly we're getting the recognition, but there's lots more work to do within schools, careers, for us to really, really get what we need as professionals.
Interesting. If I am a very skeptical person about procurement,
yes,
and with the attitude that you have just described, tell me why procurement is important.
I think procurement is important, and I keep going on about the ethical and the sustainability things, but that in this day and age is massively important. Like you touched upon, the media are quick to jump upon anyone who does anything incorrect. Not that long ago, a large retail outlet of clothes got rumbled for having people making clothes in India, I think it was, and they had children working for hours and hours upon end. Due to technology and the media, that was outed. If a proper procurement professional was working there, I'm not saying that they're not all proper professionals, but if they had someone that was skilled, they'd have gone out there, they would have vetted the factories, they would have spoken to the staff and realised straight away that this wasn't something that was acceptable and changed it. And that protects the image of the company. And I think as well, what procurement people sort of like me are fighting to speak to businesses about is, yes, salespeople do a fantastic job. I've got nothing against salespeople. They do a fantastic job, but actually with the support of a good procurement person, the salespeople could do even better, because their prices that they're going out to market with don't have to be as high, because the inputs are lower, the end product costs less to manufacture, to produce, so they can go out with a lower price to market, potentially sell more, the customer's happy, the supplier is happy, it's win-win. So lots of work to do, but I'll keep banging my drum and keep talking to businesses and telling them that, good procurement makes good business sense.
Interesting. And just talking about the image of procurement people, or like the perception of procurement people, I like to, when you compare salespeople you mentioned, or marketing people,
Yes.
a lot of movies, to me this is an indicator, Hollywood movies or whatever, you
Yes.
have so many of the movies about salespeople, about marketing,
Yes.
Steve Jobs and different McDonald's founder, you
Mm-hmm.
name it. And then I ask people, tell me one good movie, any movie about procurement people, and you're like,
Mm-mm. I couldn't think of one.
Yes. So it's a good idea. I don't know how successful this movie will be nowadays.
Yeah, that's it. You heard us first. See us in Hollywood next year.
Yes. Right. So interesting. So still some work to do. And I believe, Katie, with efforts of people like you and spreading the good word around procurement profession, and also about the good practice of doing procurement work, the things will become better and better.
I hope so.
Good. And so tell us a little bit more about this last part you were onto, about the business. How can the business, not only the sales departments that you have just touched, benefit from effective procurement work?
So I think all aspects of the business can benefit. Effective procurement, like I've said, will ensure that a business has the maximum opportunity to make as high a profit as possible. If a business is making a significant profit, everyone within that business is going to benefit. Potentially the salaries of everyone could be more, dividends could be better, the share price could go up. So even people that aren't linked directly to procurement, we think maybe the accountants, the cleaners, all the people that are indirectly linked to that business could also benefit if a business has a really strong procurement function. They could all have a better quality of work-life balance. Procurement done well can save time as well. So even so far as people could maybe have an extra day's holiday because there's not so much work to do in the stores, because things are run streamlined, they're slick. People don't have to spend as much time doing stock checks because everything's accounted for. And because the business is making that much more money by being effective, the business can afford to give people maybe a slightly shorter working week or an extra day off at Christmas, just as a thank you. But effective procurement can contribute towards all of that across the whole business.
I like your perspective. You look beyond the savings and beyond the cost reduction. Very interesting to listen to you, Katie, honestly.
Thank you.
You put also the social aspect so well, and you were talking about sustainability and responsibility and ethical aspect. So really, really not the most standard answers. I like it.
Okay, good.
I like it a lot, Katie. And let's move into one more area, big area, and hopefully our listeners also will benefit from you talking about the education, should we say, or trainings,
Yeah.
and the roles of universities and after university education.
Yeah.
You know a lot about it. Maybe you can start with telling your connection to this area.
Yeah, of course. So I'm connected quite closely with CIPS, the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. I've been a member of CIPS for probably about 12 years now, I think.
Wow.
I took all my exams. I took 15 3-hour exams across 3 years to get the MSIPS qualification. And then 3 years ago, I upgraded and was lucky enough to be awarded a fellowship of the Chartered Institute. So I know SIPs inside out. I work quite closely with them and I mark exam papers for them as well. So I'm involved in seeing the new generation of people that are qualified coming through, and looking at some of their answers as well gives me a better understanding of procurement globally, because SIPS also has students in Africa, in India. So a lot of those papers are worldwide. I think as far as education goes, I would love to see procurement in the syllabus for exams in the UK and across Europe, within the GCSEs of business studies in the UK. I know business studies is featured, but again, it tends to be broken down into finance, marketing, sales, very, very little about procurement, if anything at all. And I spend quite a lot of time going into secondary schools and colleges, speaking to people in between the ages of 15 and 18 and asking them what they know about procurement as a profession. And very few of them actually know what procurement means. And if they do know what it means, they're not aware that there is actually a profession that you can do that is linked around buying and purchasing. So I think there's still a lot of work to do. We need to try and get the government to understand that procurement is critical in business. Thankfully, within the UK now, there is the apprenticeship levy scheme, which is going on, and procurement does now have a place in that. And there are bodies offering apprenticeships in procurement. So that's a massive step for us in the UK, that now a 16 to 18-year-old can sign up for an apprenticeship and go into a business and learn about procurement from people like myself and other trainers. And we can teach them from the grassroots up what it's like to be in procurement and get them into roles as an assistant buyer, junior buyer, stock controller, that sort of thing. So it's coming. I would love to see a degree in procurement. I think there's absolutely enough substance and content for someone to write a syllabus for a degree. Maybe that's something else for us to do, Robert, on a rainy day. But I would absolutely love to see degrees in procurement across the university globally.
Interesting. And I fully sign under each of your sentence. And example is you said about the college education. I was having MBA. There we didn't have any word about purchasing, procurement or whatsoever. I was giving this feedback to the people who have prepared this entire program, and they were like saying with a big surprise on their face, like, oh, you're the first one asking this question, actually.
It's amazing.
It's unbelievable. And so I'm not like you, Katie, and I am a very bad teacher. I'm not academic at all in this term, so maybe writing the syllabus cannot be my strong side. And I think your example of what you are doing and how you promote it among young people is really fantastic, and it deserves a big appreciation.
Thank you.
Great. So tell us a little bit more about the work you are doing for SIPS, and maybe also for our listeners to understand a little bit more about how can they benefit from SIPS or from any certification programs or programs that provides in the end some exams and certification or qualification. I mean,
Yep.
why they should go for it?
From my perspective, I think there is so much you can learn from a textbook, but actually the delivery of training in the way that we do it, through examples, through case studies and things like that, is absolutely critical to gain experience within the industry. There's SIPs and other institutes as well that promote purchasing, but the modules you can learn, things, project management, agricultural supply chain, effective negotiation, managing purchase and supply, contract law, the list is endless. But once you've got that knowledge, you can develop as a procurement professional, and you can take that knowledge into any industry. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, once you've got the core basis, the fundamental skills of the procurement, you understand how you need to act, what the legalities are, all the boxes you need to tick. Once you've got that, once you've understood that and got a good knowledge through training, through whichever media you choose to do, you can take that into your career and use it in any industry. And businesses are slowly beginning to realise that a trained procurement professional is actually a really good investment to their business. So people that come to businesses now with training under their belt, with the MSIP status, having listened to podcasts, having engaged on online training, having done one-to-one courses, they're actually able to negotiate a much better salary and package with employers because they can see that they take it seriously. And credible employers want someone that understands procurement inside out. So for me, training, be it SIPs, be it whatever way you choose to do it, it's fundamental to developing as a procurement professional and getting to the top of your game in the industry.
Very interesting. And this is something that you are also working with, or this is something that you are doing, yes, on a regular basis?
Correct, yes, yeah. I work with various people. I work with young people on the apprenticeship scheme that I mentioned. I work with groups of people within businesses that want to develop further. I even work with procurement managers that have been in the industry for 20 years but actually have never undertaken any training. So loads of people have lots they can learn, and absolutely I will train anyone on anything to do with procurement in any which way that suits them, because I'm passionate about it as a profession and I would just like to see it get the recognition that it really deserves.
I like it. And for today you do only offline trainings, right? On-site training, so to say.
At the moment, yes, that's right. Moving forward, I would like to do online training. I do one-to-one support on Skype, but there's no actual online training at present. But watch this space.
Katie, and then I would provoke you a little bit. We were talking about this some time ago, but now being online and being for real, I propose you to have some let's say first webinar, and for our listeners right now, it's a little bit of provocation, and I hope that you will say yes in the end. Let's organize a webinar. We will say the online intro webinar, and check is it something that many people around the globe can benefit from. So Katie, what would you say if you would prepare some of materials to have? Let's start with 1 hour training, and then try to bring some value to people and try to bring the awareness about such education. What would you say?
Absolutely. 100%. Yes, I'm in. I'll do it. No problem at all. I'd love to.
I like it. So, dear listeners, wait for the information coming up in future procurement in our LinkedIn profiles. I will also leave, Katie, your LinkedIn profile, of course, in the show notes here. And I'm really curious. I don't know what will it be. Maybe you have already some idea, Katie, but try to make it as good as we can from the very beginning.
Absolutely. Be brilliant.
Super. And I'm very curious, Katie, to see the outcome. And for you, dear listeners, as we say, we will announce it. Probably it will be already in 2018. After holidays, and then let's see what it will become.
Perfect. Good plan.
Super good plan, Katie, and super excited once again to talk to you. I had so big expectation talking to you, and you exceeded them by far. And you even said yes so easily on my provocation. I don't know, should I aim higher from beginning? But let's see what it will be next time. Thank you so much, Katie, for your time.
You're welcome. Absolutely. No, I look forward to delivering as much and sharing and imparting knowledge with the listeners. Look forward to working with everyone and speaking with everyone soon.
Great. In the end, Katie, before we say goodbye, I ask you to share your contacts. How can people find you and your company in case they have more questions?
Of course, yes. My company is Aspire Procurement Solutions Limited, the longest name in the world. I do apologise for that. And my website is www.aspireprocurement.co.uk. Feel free to click on there or look for me on LinkedIn. My name is Katie Jarvis-Grove. Drop me a line. Hook up with me, give me feedback on this, and ask me any questions. I'd love to hear from anyone.
Thank you once again.
You're welcome.
And
thank you.
We hear you more on the webinar.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Thank you, dear listeners, for being with us till the very end of this episode of Future Procurement. It was Katie Jarvis-Grove, a super interesting procurement professional, as you have heard, very experienced, very knowledgeable, and also Katie is really willing to share more with us. And as you heard, we agreed with her to run some webinar, and I'm really excited to pre-announce this webinar with all of you listening to this podcast. So I will leave the registration form for the early birds, so to say. It will be a free webinar in the very beginning of January, I'm sure. So few weeks from now, and please leave your email and name to be pre-registered to this webinar, and we will announce the details by email a little bit later. So super excited to talk soon more with you, and also with Katie Jarvis-Grove. This was Robert Freeman and Future Procurement. Talk to you soon.